Put down that camera and strap in. It's time for a new episode of TogChat Live. Get ready for 60 minutes of wall-to-wall photography, including photo news, tog tips, and image reviews to help you improve your photography. Here's your host, Joe Edelman.
Hey gang, thanks for joining me for TogChat episode number 64. I am indeed Joe Edelman, and my mission is to help photographers like you develop a solid understanding of the hows and whys behind great photographs. So gang, as always, it is so awesome to see you guys here tonight. I mean, I've got Florian, Brett's here, Robert Bechtel's here, Troy, Brian. Troy made it, but he's got an excuse again. Tonight, he's always got an excuse. Anand is here. So at some point, we'll have to talk about frequency separation before the night's over. And Roland and Chris and Doreen and James Brown and Jeffrey, Trevor. Guys, seriously, thank you for spending another one of your Monday evenings here with me on TogChat. I've got some really cool photos tonight. I'm going to review those, of course, and I'm going to take your questions and do my best to answer them live during the show. So stay tuned, okay? So before we get going, I need all of you, please take a moment. And Trevor's already been doing this, gang, so you got some catching up to do. Tell your photography friends that we are streaming live on YouTube right now. Twitter, Facebook, they're the best way to get the word out in a hurry. I hope you'll pass it along. So I want to get right into the photo reviews for us so that we don't waste any time. Remember, if you would like to have your photo reviewed here on TogChat, the easiest way to do it and the best way to do it is to join my Facebook group. The link is in the description below the video. My buddy Chad's going to paste that link into the chat window for you here. I pick 5 new images each week. I discuss them here on the live show. And as I've told you guys many times before, they're not always the best. In fact, sometimes they're the worst. I pick them because they give me an opportunity to try and teach you something that hopefully will be useful to you, okay? So gang, listen, our first image, it comes to us from Adam Telega in Coventry, England. So to give you the background, all of Adam's stats, camera, lens, settings, they're all up in the upper left-hand corner. You can see them here up in the screen. Now, you know that I ask for lots of background information when people post images in my Facebook group. So Adam has told me, well, first of all, I should say welcome Adam because this is his first post to my group. He's been shooting for about a year. He set up a small studio in his spare bedroom. He started working on a portfolio about a month ago and he decided he wanted to create a beauty shot. So he posted in a couple of Facebook groups, local Facebook groups, that he was looking for a beginner makeup artist to help him build his portfolio and so that he could help him or her build a makeup portfolio. So he did get a couple responses from beginners, and he also got one response from a makeup artist with about 6 years experience, which of course is the one that he chose to work with for this shot. Now, he felt that this young woman was a really good subject for this because he felt that she had a unique look that would be interesting for a beauty shot. When it came time for the shoot, she was a little nervous. So very wisely, he put his camera down and just spent some time talking until she relaxed, then picked the camera up and worked on the shot. Adam, that's very good. So he shot it at f11 so that he wasn't going to have any problems with depth of field. He wanted to make sure he kept everything sharp. For lighting, he used a Yongnuo, a YN560 at about half power and 120 centimeter octabox. The octabox was about 1 meter away from the subject, just about in line with the camera. In other words, above the camera, aimed down at about 45 degrees. So that was his primary light. He did his image retouching in Photoshop, a little bit of frequency separation, and also some dodge and burn. And then he added the blue background. Now, if Adam can shoot this again, he would like to use an additional speedlight and possibly gels so that he could light the background that color blue instead of swapping it out in post. Also, he's a little concerned about her tattoo. He finds it a bit distracting. He tried to remove it in post, but by his own admission, he needs a little bit more practice. Remember, he's still new to the game. He's been shooting for a little over a year here, so he's doing pretty good by those standards. Specifically, what he's looking for from me is feedback on, number one, is the tattoo really a distraction or a problem? And he's also wondering about his crop, if he's done an okay job, or if maybe he should have included more of her arms in the shot. So, first of all, Adam, for the amount of time that you have been shooting, let me just say congratulations. You're off to a really, really good start, and you're setting some very high standards for yourself. So I really, really like to see that. As far as the background yet, or I should say yet, the background and swapping out the background. My hope for you is if you have another speedlight that you will try lighting the background, or when you're able to purchase a speedlight that you will go that route. I am all for swapping out backgrounds. The reason I'm making an issue of it with you at this point, I worry about seeing young/new photographers rely too much on the Photoshop trickery when they're early in the learning curve. There's a phrase that's starting to gain some momentum around the internet, and it's, Photoshoptographer. Don't become a Photoshoptographer. Become a good photographer who excels at Photoshop. So certainly I'm not going to hold it against you. In this case, I think you did a great job with what you've got to work with. But I do hope that you will either revisit this scenario or a similar one and really work on being able to light a background so that you can pretty much come out of camera, maybe take out a couple stray hairs, and you're good to go. But I will tell you, in terms of masking and swapping the background, you did a great job here. So kudos for that. My biggest piece of feedback for your shot actually isn't about the tattoo or the arms. I'll address that since that's what you asked. For me, it is her hands. You've got to be really careful with claws. So you've heard me say many times when it comes to posing, and this applies to hands, feet, you name it, okay? There's a simple guideline. I hate to use the word rule, but it's a guideline. That is, if it bends, bend it. You'll get yourself in less trouble following that guideline than you will a lot of the other posing guidelines that are out there, okay? So you've bent the fingers, but there is such a thing as bending things too much or bending them awkwardly. Ideally, when you are doing hands in a shot, you want elegance. You want long fingers. Now, certainly, if this was a really kind of grungy looking picture and the hair was messy and the light was dramatic, then something with a lot of tension, that would definitely fit. Given that you are kind of doing this beauty type thing here, I would really love to see the fingers longer and softer. And another little trick, be careful about having the stuff come forward on the face. If you take it back a little bit more, you get the same shot. In fact, on camera left, we could have hidden that finger bend a little bit more by sliding her hand back, and then we get the full shape of her jawline, which you see here, okay? And on camera right, same thing. We get the same feel if we slide that hand back a little bit, but we see a little bit more of her jawline, which really gives us kind of the beauty of her face. On my YouTube channel, let me switch over here really quick so I can show you guys this. This is one of my older videos, Adam. So what you do is when you go to the channel, find the little magnifying glass, which is not going to work for me because this is the new user interface for YouTube. So most of you have not seen this user interface yet. But if you click on that little magnifying glass in the existing one and you type in hands while you're on my channel, that video will come up. But for now, since that's not going to work here, I'm going to click on the videos tab, and maybe I won't even do that. So we'll scroll down. At the bottom of the homepage, you should be able to find this video right here. There it is. How to handle hands. Watch that video. It will give you some pretty heavy breakdown on the types of things that I'm just talking about and some things that you can do and kind of look out for when you're shooting hands to help keep things a little bit softer, a little bit more elegant. So I would encourage you, check that out. I think you'll find it very helpful. And there's also, really honestly, this entire playlist that's here, photography tutorials for photographing people. I think you'll find these very helpful if you're going to try and do this type of beauty work, okay? So going back to the shot here, I will tell you that, from a lighting standpoint, I love what you did. It's simple. And it's basic, and you guys know that I love that. So, I mean, really, it's spot on. There's really nothing wrong with it. That brings us to your comments that you asked about. Chad, thank you for putting that video link in there. You asked about the tattoo, and you asked about the crop on her arm. I don't object to the crop on her arm. Florian, so many videos that you haven't seen yet. Well, I don't know what you're doing with your time, but you need to catch up, okay? So anyway, back to the cropping here, Adam. I don't really have a problem with your cropping at all. You're in a range that is very subjective, meaning some people will say it should be tighter, some people will say it should be looser. Those are straight up opinions. I really I don't see any problem with it at all. Indeed, me personally, so, here's kind of the irony of this statement. I'm not a huge fan of, the tattoos and pictures and all that kind of stuff. So I do find the tattoo distracting. But let's be clear, that's personal taste. And of course, I guess it's a double standard since I wear them, but I don't really like seeing them in pictures of women. So, and obviously there are lots of people that, their philosophy is more tattoos the better. They think that's really sexy. Cool. No problem there. So, if we look at it from a scientific standpoint, in other words, cognitive psychology here, will that tattoo draw attention away from her eyes? It absolutely will. There is science that proves that to us. It's just like the earrings. That doesn't particularly make it bad in this case because it's her. So I think the way that I would encourage you to approach this, Adam, is if the finished picture is for you, then I would say yes. This is a great shot to practice on and go ahead and learn how to take the tattoo out. If you are providing a version for her, she's probably going to want the tattoo in. So I would make that tattoo removal the last, essentially piece of post-processing that you do. But for your portfolio, minus a tattoo will definitely be stronger. And then I have just one other tiny little bit of feedback that I don't see this as a really big deal, but it's something that I promise you it'll make a bit of a difference in your shot. And that is that hot spot on the end of her nose right there is bright. Okay. In fact, it's probably right there is probably the brightest part of the image. And I really wish that wasn't the case. That is going to draw some attention. Healing tool or a light clone stamp, I'll take that out. Or going back to my YouTube channel, there's a video called How to Fix Shiny Skin in Lightroom and Photoshop. The technique that's shown in there will solve that problem literally in less than 10 seconds and you'll be good to go. So, I would say to you, congratulations. I would send you off reminding you, protect the face. Hands back to show more face. Be very careful about the hair creeping up on the eyes here. This is Joe being super, super nitpicky. But if you're going to do beauty shots and have that kind of intense look into the camera, that's the kind of stuff that's really going to take that shot to the next level. Okay? But seriously, congratulations for the amount of time that you have been doing stuff. That's wonderful. Okay? All right, gang. So remember, if you have questions, be sure to stay tuned until the end. I see a couple of you have put some questions in. We need more though, gang. Type those questions in. I do my best to try and get all the questions answered. I'll do them right after the photo reviews at the end of TogChat. If you have a question that you really want to get answered, super chat. Click on that $sign down in the bottom left-hand corner of your chat window. For as little as $1, you can help support what I'm doing here on YouTube and elsewhere on the internet. And I guarantee you, I will stay. If I have to stay late, I will answer every super chat question that comes up during tonight's TogChat, okay? And also, gang, one other really quick reminder, if I could ask you just a quick favor, we'll do another quick piece of business. Please make sure that you are following me on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Those are the ones that I am most active on. It goes without saying, a thumbs up on the video would also be greatly appreciated if you could take a second to do that. Okay. All right. So listen, next up, I have got an image here, and I'm going to switch back to my Lightroom screen and get this on the screen for you. So this is from Carlos Gallego. Carlos is in Roanoke, Virginia, another Nikon shooter here. All the stats, you'll see him up in the upper left-hand corner. And to give you the background on this shot from Carlos, Carlos is also a first-time poster in my Facebook group, and in his own words, a long-time lurker, which, it's worth letting you guys know. We've got well over 8,000 members in this Facebook group, and if I'm being completely honest, probably less than 100 that post on a regular basis. And that number's growing, but it really is a group where people kind of come to learn and observe and watch, and that's okay. To be a member, you do not have to post in the group, okay? So Carlos wanted to create a dramatic contrast with the background, but he wanted to keep the model's face bright, and he wanted to keep it soft, so he didn't want like really harsh shadows. So he decided to go with one octabox. He's got it on camera right. It's set about 3.5 to 5 feet away from the model, and the model is about 3 to 4 feet from a black background. Okay, so that's basically the setup here. All of his processing was done in Lightroom. He was kind of trying to challenge himself to see that if he could do all the posts without Photoshop. Not a bad idea, okay? If he could do it again, he would work with a rim light. Camera left probably, maybe try out some gels just to put a little bit of color into it, okay? So my feedback for you, Carlos, this is really interesting for me because it actually breaks a lot of my rules. So that being said, the materials, I'm assuming they're scarves that you have wrapped around her, one around her head, one around her, it looks like her body and her arms, or maybe that's the same one, just different parts of it. They're really, really busy. Add to that the tattoo, which is busy, and there's a lot going on here, okay? So the challenge with this is, what I think you've done very, very well here is you've managed, for me at least, you've managed to create a shot that breaks a lot of the rules. It's got a lot of busy stuff going on, but I really do manage to lock in on her eyes. She's very pretty. She's got a great expression. Now, that being said, how can we take this idea and improve it for you? Well, if it were me, there are a couple suggestions that I have for you. So number one, you're probably going to figure out already, I'm going to say solid colors. So I love the idea of wrapping the material and things like that, but boy, I think this would be so much stronger if you were using kind of darker solid greens or darker navy blues or even like darker reds, like a burgundy or something like that. It's just going to be so much stronger visually because it's simpler. Simple is a really, really good thing when you're going for impact. That's the key here, okay? So, again, just like with the last beauty shot that we saw, I find this young lady's tattoo distracting, but I admit that's my own personal taste. The science tells us people will spend additional time looking at her nose ring, looking at her lip piercing, looking at her tattoo. But those are things that are her. So depending on the purpose of the shot, depending on who the finished version is for, they're not particularly bad. And let's face it, if you really wanted to, you could cover that arm and that tattoo with the material. The big thing that I would like to see you do a little bit different when you try this again, and I really hope, since you've already identified that you would like to try a rim on this, which by the way, this is one of those great examples where, for me at least, I'm not bothered at all by the fact that there's no rim. In fact, in a lot of ways, I have to tell you, I think the lack of a rim light makes this shot stronger. I've had people ask me because of comments I've made recently, like, well, sometimes you say you really like the rim light, sometimes you say you really don't like the rim light. What's the guideline? There is no guideline. It's simply a matter of, if you've got a shot that's really strong on personality, and I don't necessarily mean the person's face and what they're doing, but just it's got a really good mood. A rim light can take that mood and turn it very commercial and actually get in the way. Flip side of that, you can have a shot that is a very nice shot that's maybe lacking some of that energy, and a rim light gives it a little bit of pop. So all that being said, I think most importantly, the key is, I don't like the rim light to be the key feature in the picture. And so the challenge is, the brighter your rim light gets, the harder you need to work with the personality of the subject to really keep the attention. That's the way I look at it. So I don't, for this particular shot, I don't miss a rim light at all. I do wish that I wasn't seeing the arm down here, which is something you could burn that down a little bit more. It's not that it has to be like gone, but you could burn it down a little bit and it's going to be less of a distraction. But ultimately, when you shoot this again, ever so slightly, I totally understand the idea that she's kind of peeking out from underneath the scarf at the camera. I'm okay with that. But ever so slightly, cheat that face just a little bit more to the camera, just a bit more. This young lady has gorgeous eyes. I mean, gorgeous, they're huge. You get that nose coming to the camera ever so slightly, and a couple things happen. Number one, we get more impact from the eyes because they're not shoved in the corners. This is one of those cases, I'm not a fan of this little piece of hair there, but some people like that, so I'm going to leave that as a wash. If you like it, cool. If not, by all means, get rid of it. But by turning that face just ever so slightly more back to the camera, you also minimize the nose ring. Okay? That way you could leave it in the shot, but you're minimizing it in that sense. So I think if I were going to do anything different, and again, this is just a personal taste, instead of the rim light, to separate her, what I would actually be inclined to do is take the second strobe, put a gel on it, something that's complementary or something that matches the colors that I've got her wrapped in, and throw that at the background so that it creates just a hint of a glow. Not a really bright glow, but just a hint of a glow coming out behind her. And I would separate her that way. It's going to be a lot more subtle. So that would be my recommendation for you. Okay? All right. So as we move on here, gang, please know also, just really quick, I know I mention this every week, but I want to mention again, I really appreciate you guys coming out on a Monday night to spend this time with me, and I appreciate your support by watching my videos and following me on social media. If you find the material that I'm producing helpful, please check out my Patreon profile. The link is in the description below the video. You can also see it here on the screen right now. My patrons get special access to videos that are not posted on YouTube, and they get to attend our Friday Zoom chats, which are live video chats, which allow us all to interact and chat with each other. And honestly, we actually have a whole lot of fun doing it. So you can support my teaching efforts for as little as $1 per month. That's $12 a year on Patreon, okay? And please remember, if you have a question that you really want to get answered tonight, all you've got to do is hit that $sign in the bottom left-hand corner of your chat window, show your support for as little as $1, and I'll stay here as long as it takes to get those questions answered, okay? So next up for us, picture number 3 tonight is from Argemiro Neto, and I hope I said that right. He's in Vancouver, Canada. He's originally from Brazil. All of your tech specs, you can see them here in upper left of the shot. So this shot is from a series of test shoots that he's doing to build a portfolio and become better known in his local market. So I just saw this really quick go by. FGH Casadio Records. I see your question. Do me a favor. Hit that link that's in the description. tog.chat/question. Type that question in, and I'll do my best to get to it when I get to the Q&A at the end of the night here, okay? So back to our shot here. This shot is from a series of test shoots that he's doing to build a portfolio and to try and become a little bit better known in his local market, which certainly I think a picture like this is going to help for sure. This shot was done in his living room, which just goes to show you don't have to have a big studio. He lit it with a Godox DE300 strobe. It's on camera left at about 80 centimeters from the model. Minimum power, also in an 80 centimeter softbox. He's got a small light on camera right side, which is really just his reflection from the wall of the other light. So it's very, very close. So he's using that as a reflector, okay? His cropping is done in camera. This is pretty much the shot in terms of the way he had it framed. If he could do it again, he'd back up a little bit to have a slightly looser crop. So, Argemiro, I gotta be honest with you, I would not back up. I love this tight crop. I think it's awesome. Now, if you were going to change her pose and do something else, okay, then maybe backing up makes a little bit more sense. When I first saw the shot, I'll be perfectly honest with you, when I first saw the shot go up in Facebook, I thought it was a little dark. And then the more I looked at it, it really kind of grew on me with the tonal range and the brightness levels that you have here. So, I got to be honest, I think that you did a really great job with that. And so my initial thought process, I completely take back. I think that if anything, my biggest piece of feedback for you here is her posture. So you mentioned that you are doing these shots to, build out your portfolio, also to, try and get known a little bit better locally. Keep doing more of this stuff. Believe me, this will work for you. And what I'm about to kind of pick on is not something that most people that look at this shot will ever consider. So I'm being super picky, and again, always trying to push you guys to the next level. But if we look, gang, at her shoulders, she's sitting like really kind of cockeyed, all right? Camera right shoulder, her right shoulder, is way up in the air. So the camera left shoulder is way up in the air. Her left shoulder, which is camera right, is really, really low. At this crop, it is, I don't know, it's just off a little bit. Like, to me, it's kind of odd. If her head was tilted a little bit more, and I don't mean a lot more, seriously, but tilted just a little bit more, I think you wind up with a scenario where it all kind of makes a little bit more sense, okay? Just real quick here, Music Buzzed, do me a favor, tog.chat/question. Type your question in there. I will do my best to answer it when I get to Q&A session, but by the time I get to the Q&A, your question's going to go by and I won't see it and I'm not going to be able to answer it. That's a really good question. It's one that's worth mentioning, but I need you to type it in to that URL. My buddy Chad's going to post the link here in the chat for you in just a second, and that way you'll be able to go follow that, okay? It's also in the description for the video. So, Argemiro, honestly, that's the biggest thing I've got for you is just kind of watch that angling. I have a feeling, and obviously, gang, I wasn't there. I haven't talked to him. But I have a feeling that he was working the shot, something I talk about a lot, trying kind of different things, and literally kind of had the girl doing one thing and kind of wound up coming in for a slightly tighter crop. Big impact, but that shoulder thing kind of just bugs me just a tiny little bit. By no means does it ruin the shot. 9 out of 10 people are going to look at that and be like, wow. So I think you did a really, really great job there. Argemiro did not mention it in his post. I have a feeling that the post-production on this has a little bit of frequency separation, probably some dodging and burning in it. If I'm wrong, I sincerely apologize, but I don't think I am. I would encourage you, Argemiro, back off ever so slightly. Just ever so slightly. It is not bad by any means, but it's almost just a little too perfect. You know, if you were shooting this and it was going to be a makeup ad, okay, they're going to go for that. But if it's not, you're doing portraits, okay? I'd rather see you back off ever so slight. And then honestly, the one thing you might want to do, if your goal is to make this look like it's right out of a makeup ad, there's one other piece that you missed that you can fix in post, and that is her mouth. This young lady has a very small mouth. Face-aware liquify in Photoshop will let you enlarge the mouth a little bit, just a little. You're not going to like give her a big Cheshire grin, okay? But enlarge it just a little bit. It's going to balance that face out a little bit more, and you'll be good to go. But I honestly think you could afford to back off just a tad on that frequency separation, and I don't think that your shot would suffer from that at all, okay? All right, next shot we have comes to us from Little Elm, Texas. This is Suad Bejtovic, and I hope I didn't mess that up, Suad, okay? So also a longtime lurker in my group, and this is his first post, okay? And I picked this shot because there's some really, really great learning things that we can get out of this one, a few things. So this picture was a senior photo that he shot for the daughter of a good friend. They met at a local office park. It was like an hour or two before sunset. This young lady had a more elegant dress on for the first part of the session, but she also wanted to have some photos done kind of in a more casual outfit. So keep in mind, we're talking like if it's a high school senior portrait, we're talking like 16, 17, 18-year-old, 17 on the average. So they did the second half of the shoot in the casual outfit. They did it in the shade near the office buildings and around a little pond kind of lake that's there. Literally not even 500 yards from where I live. I've got a very, very similar setup with a very small office complex of like 3 office buildings, and there's a little tiny lake with trees around it, which I've shot around that lake many, many, many times because it's, you know, actually in really easy walking distance from where I'm at. So obviously this shot is part ambient light. He also has it lit with a strobe, and that's a Canon 430EX, so it's a speed light on a shoot-through umbrella. He's got that umbrella set above and slightly off to camera left, okay? So other details that he gave me here in post, obviously he did his exposure manipulation in Camera Raw, and then in Photoshop removed some blemishes, which most 17-year-olds, you're gonna deal a little bit with that. Overall, he's happy with the shot. He tried my work the shot concept, did a lot of different camera angles, also different crops, and different facial expressions while he was at it. If he could do it again, he'd try to create shallower depth of field so that he could separate the subject from the background and even the foreground for that matter. For a long time, he shares that his 17-40 f4 lens has kind of been his go-to all-purpose lens on his Canon, while he likes how the shot turned out at 24mm, which keep in mind, this is an APS-C camera, so it's technically about 38mm, you know, visually. He, of course, realizes that he might have had a more interesting effect with a longer focal length and or possibly a faster lens. His big question, does this work as an environmental portrait and or a senior portrait? He's looking for some feedback on the posing and the framing, and then also what post-production techniques would improve the shot. Okay, so Suad, first of all, I think that you did a good job here. I do think that you've got areas that you could dramatically improve this shot. And the good part is you've actually identified every one of them. Okay, so let's talk about environmental portrait. My personal feeling on an environmental portrait is that, and I say it that way because you will find people that have some slightly varied definitions in practice, and that's okay. My personal definition of an environmental portrait is one that shows the subject in kind of a natural setting that is their natural setting. In other words, that environment that's shown helps tell a story about the subject. So do I consider this an environmental portrait? No. Yes, she's outside in the environment, but I would not consider it an environmental portrait because it's not like we're seeing her, shall we say, in her natural habitat, okay? And that doesn't make it bad. In terms of, is it a good senior portrait idea? I think that conceptually it's much more in the direction of a senior portrait than an environmental portrait. So I think a lot of people get stuck on that phrase, environmental portrait, thinking, oh, outside, okay, it's an environmental portrait. No. When we say environmental portrait, we mean a portrait that helps tell us a little bit more about the subject because of the environment that they are photographed in. So I hope that makes more sense, okay? In terms of the posing and the framing, as it sits right here, in other words, without you changing lenses like you talked about, without you changing your camera angle or anything else, the only thing that I would really like to see you do to the shot is crop the bottom of the frame down a little bit more so that we're not seeing the reflection of the building and the street signs, and then go ahead and retouch out this lamp post. And that actually may be a duck, but it's a distraction. And albeit these are very small distractions at the top, but the point is they're bringing nothing to this shot at all. They're completely extra space, lose them. I'm not saying crop out the trees because then you're going to be cropping this way down. You could, but if you're selling prints from this senior portrait session, that would give you a very awkward size, which is going to be very hard to make a standard print size out of. So that's probably not your best route to go, okay? Ideally, you had the right idea. Longer lens, shallower depth of field. Now, unfortunately, and also for me, this is a pose that traditionally is done with a woman in lingerie on a bed. So you do have to be a little bit careful with this pose. Now, by no means am I saying like, oh, this is inappropriate or it's wrong. But I think what I would rather see is I would rather see a lower camera angle where I'm at her eye level. Now, I realize based on these reflections that are back here, specifically the building and the street signs, that part of the challenge in this exact location might be that if you get lower, you're going to have not as nice a background. That's where the shallower depth of field will help. Longer lens and faster lens will both help you. Bottom line is this. Shooting any kind of a photograph of a human being when it's meant to be some type of a portrait, whether it's an environmental portrait, a full-length portrait, a close-up portrait, any kind of portrait, shooting a portrait at the equivalent of like 38 millimeter, you're risking distortion in that person. So I will tell you that as a rule, you mentioned that your go-to lens is that 17 to 40. My advice to you would be that if you're going to do people pictures, senior portraits, etc., your go-to lens needs to be, if you're going to work with zooms, it needs to be a 70 to 200. Or maybe get an 85. Or at a minimum, even a 50 millimeter, because that's going to put you up to 75 millimeter, okay? And I will tell you, Suad, that, obviously it's easy for me to spend people's money, right? And say, hey, go get a new lens. You can pick up a 50 millimeter 1.8 lens, Canon or Nikon, whatever, cheap, really cheap. And that's going to solve your problem right here. You're never going to have to worry about distortion. It's going to help give you more shallow background or depth of field because of the lens compression that you'll get at a 50 millimeter. It's longer than a 38. and it's going to be a faster lens, so you can open up more. All that combined, you're good to go. So all that being said, I would lower the camera angle, go with more shallow depth of field, which there is that possibility it would require you to find a different location with a better background. But that brings me to one last thing. I would love to see you dial your flash down in power and balance with the ambient light a little bit more. You're overpowering the ambient light just a little bit here. Not even a full stop, but you're overpowering it. For me, it feels a little too much like a fill flash kind of scenario. And with the light being above her and the heavy shadows on the bottom, they're not horrible by any means, but it has kind of an old school feel to it. And I promise you, kids today are not looking for old school, okay? If you dialed that flash down a little bit, balance your flash out with the ambient and used it literally as more of a fill to get a nicer, softer, even lighting, I honestly think you're going to wind up with an overall image that's going to have a lot more pop for you. Also, what that's going to do for you is going to solve one other problem, and that is the shiny skin that you have on the cheek, the forehead. So for this shoot, Suad, go find the video on my YouTube channel, how to fix shiny skin in Lightroom and Photoshop. That will solve this literally in about 3 seconds, okay? While you're in Photoshop, I want you to go ahead and create an adjustment layer in your layers palette. And then what you're going to do is, actually, take it back. Before you create the adjustment layer, grab your selection tool and you're going to draw a selection around her ear right here, okay? Then you're going to create an adjustment layer in your layers palette. You're going to make that adjustment layer a hue and saturation, and you are going to pull down on the saturation of the magenta, okay? Not all the way down. Probably about 20 or so, minus 20. After you do that, you're going to blur that layer, Gaussian blur, by about 10 pixels. What that's going to do is it's going to take that hot pink out because she's resting on her ear. So you have to be really careful about that stuff. But that's why her ear is like this bright red and the rest of her face isn't, okay? So definitely, at least for the sake of this shot, fix that shiny skin. Super easy to do. Watch that video. Take care of that ear so that it's not quite as red. If you're not sure exactly what I'm talking about and the steps that I'm talking about, Suad, I know you remember the Facebook group. Catch up with me in the Facebook group and ask me about that, and I will kind of detail it step by step for you a little bit better. And then indeed, I would love to see you just really work on a little bit better background, balance the flash and the ambient, and try and shoot a little bit wider in this case. And what would have worked great here is that you essentially have her lined up straight across in front of your lens. So shallow depth of field, you would have been fine to get everything sharp. That would have, been absolutely great. Okay? All right, gang. Next up, we have another one here that we can learn a little bit from. And I kind of like this shot, but indeed there are some issues with it, but not bad issues. They're good issues. So let's explain. This comes to us from Nicole in Burke, Virginia. Shot with a Canon 6D and a 50mm f1.4 lens. All your stats are there in the upper left-hand corner. So Nicole is also a first-time poster. I have to be nice because she was worried that I'd say something really bad about her picture, and I promised her I wouldn't. So don't worry, Nicole, I'm not going to. So she did this shot. It was part of a group shoot at a local car dealer. So some of you already know where I'm going to go with my feedback on this shot just by saying that, right? So she loved the model's clothing and her hair and her makeup. So this particular picture wasn't really planned. She saw the model sitting in the car in between sets. She loved the look, and she went for it. So the shot's all natural light, no modifiers. If she could shoot it again, she would like to recompose and not cut off the model's hands at the bottom. So now, here's where the real conversation comes in. And this is something that I think is very helpful for all of you to understand. She noted in her post in my group that this photo seems to be the favorite photo from the model and all the model friends. But it wasn't Nicole's favorite from this set of pictures. She lamented, she finds that this happens to her frequently, where her favorite picture from a session is often not the favorite photo of the model or the client. In fact, It's not even in their top picks a lot of the time. So she admits it's kind of starting to wear on her, and she's worried that the ones that she likes are not liked by others because they're just not that good. So, Nicole, here's the good news. You don't suck. You don't have bad taste. It's not your fault. Well, it's kind of your fault, but let me explain, okay? What you have to learn here, Nicole, is that the experience that you have with a picture, your picture, is never going to be the same experience that someone else will have with your photo. Ever. In fact, even if that person was standing right next to you, right on your shoulder, they will not have the same experience as you do. And the person in your photo, even though they were there, collaborating with you, helping you make the picture, they will never have the exact same experience that you do. So the idea that someone would like something different, that's okay. Now, here's where your challenge does come in though, Nicole. If you have hopes of reaching a point where you are charging people for your photography and making money with it on a consistent basis, you have to understand and respect everything that I just told you, but you have to begin to learn and understand your subjects and try to understand and anticipate what will they like. That's how you make money. Because if you're just showing your subjects what you like, you'll never make any money. And if you're afraid to show your subjects pictures because you're afraid of showing them their own ones and you show them tons of pictures, you're not going to make any money because you're going to overwhelm your clients and they're not going to know what to pick. So you do have to start to learn why a client would like one shot over another, etc. So Nicole was kind enough to share in the Facebook group, to share the shot that she liked the most from this shoot. So I wanted to show this to you guys first, so we have a point of reference. This is the picture that Nicole liked the most. Now, very pretty girl here, gorgeous girl, amazing eyes, got great lips, beautiful figure, all that stuff, okay? This young lady was a model at a group shoot with fancy cars. She went with a pinup look. So she had the skirt, the top, the hairdo, the makeup, the whole bit. Nothing about this picture says pinup. That's why she doesn't like it the most, Nicole, because she put all this effort into creating kind of this character, which is what she has there. Okay? Part of the reason, Nicole, that I would suggest that you don't like this one as much as the other shot is that here she's looking not only away from your camera, but her eyes are going even further away from the camera so that her pupils are just shoved into the corner of her eyes. And indeed, as you mentioned, it's kind of a tight crop and you lose her hands. In your picture, at least, while she is still not actually looking directly at you, there is more eye impact. And believe me, it'd be a whole lot better yet if she was actually looking where her nose is going, Nicole. So that brings us to 2 points. Number one, group shoots. And Nicole, I don't mean this in any bad way towards you. I've said this many, many times before. Group shoots suck. Period. For photographers who are learning and trying to build a portfolio, group shoots are the worst damn thing you can do. For a lot of reasons. Number one, you have no control. In fact, you have no responsibility. You didn't plan it. You didn't set it up. You have no control. You don't decide where the lights are, where the models do, what they wear. You decide none of that. So you're just walking around like paparazzi hoping to get a picture. And if you do get a picture, there's how many other photographers that are at the same shoot taking pictures of the same model in the same outfit, the same hair, the same makeup, same background, same location, same cars. So you've got nothing that's unique. Your shot may be better than all 15 other photographers, but it's not unique. So the problem is these group shoots, gang, understand all they are is social events. You're not learning and you're not progressing. If you're going to do this kind of photography, folks, and again, I'm not picking on Nicole here. There's a lot of you that need to understand and learn this lesson. If you are going to progress as a photographer, you've got to own it. You've got to take the responsibility. You've got to make the decisions. You've got to learn to interact with your subjects. Have that control. And if you want to be able to market yourself, you have to be able to individualize and separate yourself to set yourself apart from everyone else. So that's really where the problem comes in. So ultimately, Nicole, to get back to your concern, I promise you, don't worry about the fact that she liked this one better, because to me, it completely makes sense that she liked this one better. Completely makes sense. That doesn't mean it's the best shot. But what you do need to do, if your long-term goal is to make money, you need to learn to anticipate what your subjects would want and why they would want it. And I think if you do that, Nicole, honestly, I think you're going to find more and more and more, you're going to have a much better sense of this is what they're going to like. And remember, I talk about it all the time, doing, like, let's say it was this picture, potentially doing two versions of the picture, one version for the model and another version for you. Like, for instance, if I took this picture, let's just say hypothetically she had a big tattoo here, okay? Well, for her, she's going to want that tattoo in the picture. She likes her tattoo. She's proud of it. So if I was going to put this picture in my portfolio, I would create one version of it for her with the tattoo, and then I would remove the tattoo for my portfolio. So, all things to consider. But, ultimately, Nicole, I would really love to see you do stuff like this. And if you're able to contact this young woman, since, you've been interacting with her, ask her to get in front of your camera again. You, one-on-one, work together. Ask her to collaborate with you. And even if you're shooting out on location, whatever it is, she's gorgeous. I mean, she's absolutely beautiful. Get her back in front of your camera. Don't let this girl get away. Work with her again and do more stuff. Build out your portfolio. You'll be able to do some wonderful things. Okay? So next up, gang, it is time for Q&A. All right? So I've got a bunch of questions, that have been put into the queue here. So I'm going to start in with those. I hope that you guys will take a minute. Chad's going to put that link back here in the chat window. Give me a couple more questions here. We'll finish out the night. I'll get through as many of these as I can. And let's see what we got. So first up, I've got a question here. Where are we at here? From Anand, all the way down under. All right, Anand, I haven't picked on you in a while, so let's do your question first. We ready? Let me switch my screen back here so that we're not staring at all kind of different stuff. All right, gang. So here we go. Anand's question. How would you deal with rush shoots where the subject only has a few hours with you and you only have a few hours to prepare? I'm getting a client flying in tomorrow, flying into my studio tomorrow morning. I found out today. Okay, Anand, so you kind of left out a lot of information here. In terms of how would I deal with it? If I agreed to do it, which I assume you agreed to do it, I'm going to stay up as late tonight as I have to stay up, or get up as early tomorrow morning as I have to get up, and set my studio up, get my lighting set, run my tests. That's it. I will tell you that from my experience, I rarely agree to a rush shoot. Rarely. Unless I am feeling confident enough that I'm enough on the same page with my subject that I'm not going to be put at a disadvantage. You guys have heard me talk many, many times that I will not accept a shoot or put myself in a situation where I'm going to fail, because then, that just works against my reputation. I would rather be known for being a bit of a diva and a pain in the ass and delivering consistently high quality work than for getting overeager, taking something on and then failing because the model wasn't properly prepared, didn't have the right clothes, didn't prep her hair and her makeup the day before, because all those things are going to have an impact on your shoot. So, I'm just not that desperate to shoot anybody. I never have been. If they want to shoot with me, they're going to collaborate with me. They're going to work with me, So the idea that somebody's like flying in tomorrow, I hope they're paying you a lot of money. And if they're paying you a lot of money, you need to make sure that you are putting yourself in a situation where you have control. Otherwise, you're really just asking to fail. So if you want to give me some more background or some more detail, go ahead and type it in the chat room, in the chat window now, and I'll kind of try and catch that going by. And maybe I can give you some more specifics, but kind of the way you've got the question worded here, that would be my answer to you. Okay? So next up, I got a question here from Marcos. How important for you in the formation of a photographer is it to not only know about photography technique, also know about art, color theory, design, etc.? Not important at all. Lightning didn't strike. I'm still alive. How about that? Is it bad to know those things? It's not bad. But I find that too many people feel they have to know all that information, and then it becomes this gospel in their mind. And then their work is boring. It's technically wonderful, but it's visually boring. So, no great, earth-shattering work ever came by looking backwards. It comes by looking forward, by exploring, by trying things. So, you mentioned art, color theory, design. Well, can principled designs help? Yes, but they can also hurt if you're a follow the rules person. Can color theory hurt or help? Color theory can actually help a lot unless you're getting into it as a rule, which says you should only put these kind of tones with these kind of tones. No, not at all. Okay, that's safe and that's not bad, but that's also not innovative. To know about art, I don't know a damn thing about art. So here, I'm going to go ahead and sound really, really shallow, but true story. I find art boring as hell. Literally. Art museums, all that kind of stuff. It's like, please, just painful. Now, I don't want to sound like a jerk or sound like I'm shallow, but let me explain why. Remember what I said earlier when I was starting my review of Nicole's picture? No one else is going to have the same experience as you do with your work. So for me to go to an art museum and look at a Rembrandt or a Renoir, I find them horribly boring. I have mad respect for the technique and for the work that went into it, for the idea that they could take a paintbrush and they create shadows and depth, that kind of stuff. Mad respect for that. I'm kind of the same with music. I'm a guy that I'll listen to the pop music that's on the radio because it's upbeat, because it's got energy to it, etc. Ask me to listen to classical music, oh my God, please, put me out of my misery. But give me an opportunity to go to a concert and watch an orchestra play, I'll be there in a heartbeat. Because to watch people do it and to watch the craft and the craftsmanship and the artistry behind it, that's cool. I won't enjoy the music, but I will love the experience of watching people create it. So that's kind of my outlook. Everybody's got to find their comfort zone there, Marcos. I don't feel it's necessary at all. But are there a lot of people that do both? Sure. And are there a lot of people that don't? Equally as many. So honestly, it's kind of one of those things where you really have to decide what do you feel the most comfortable with and what do you feel helps you the most. But I would argue, regardless of your comfort level, regardless of which route you go, understand that a point in time comes where you have to let yourself not get put in a box by that stuff. You absolutely do not want to be in a box. Okay? All right, so Ethan's got a question. What are your thoughts on TFP collaborative shoots for building a portfolio? Is it an acceptable scenario, or should we be expected to pay models, hair and makeup artists to help build a portfolio? I would tell you absolutely, as much as possible, you want to do TFP and collaborative shoots, or TFP, time for print. You can name them whatever you want. People have all kind of names for them at this point. Time for prints is kind of a misnomer because almost nobody gives out prints. Pretty much everybody gives out digital files, and that's great. But sure, trade as much as you absolutely can. I am of the mentality that, just be a good guy about it. So, perfect example. A couple weeks ago, my wife had a conference up in Boston for her work, so I tagged along. I was the chauffeur and the luggage handler, for the weekend. But I had a day stuck in a hotel room where, my choice was either work while she was at the conference or do a shoot. So I did some shots. It's a video that's coming up on YouTube about doing hotel boudoir. Okay, so literally on location in a boudoir. So it's kind of guerrilla style because no hotel is going to let you do that. This was a major hotel chain. So I contacted a model via Model Mayhem who happened to have a friend who is a makeup artist. Everybody agreed to do it, TFP. So they showed up. They were great to work with, very well prepared, followed all the directions that I gave them, really put a lot of energy into the shoot. Things went well. At the end of that, I know that, this young lady's going to have about a $40 parking bill. The young makeup artist who came used makeup that she can't reuse. All of my cameras, I can reuse them again. My discs, I can reuse them again. All the makeup she put on this young lady, she can't use. So I gave each of them money at the end of the shoot. In fact, I gave them each $50 for their time, for their efforts, as a thank you for, what they did. But it was essentially a trade. I mean, they did sign a release for me so that I could, use them in the video, that kind of stuff. So I'm not saying that you need to do that, but at the same time, be fair. I will tell you, Ethan, on my YouTube channel, there are 2 videos about working with makeup artists. One is about finding and working with a makeup artist, and the other one is like tips you should know about working with a makeup artist. Make sure you watch those, because I talk about working and finding a makeup artist when you're starting to build out a portfolio, and I talk about the idea of, if you're doing a trade, offering to pay what's called a kit fee. Kit fee is basically money to cover the cost of the makeup that the makeup artist is putting in. So, that being said, Jean Engels, TFP stands for time for print. This was a phrase that actually came out in the early 2000s. So the idea would be everybody would do a shoot, nobody got paid. The photographer would be able to use the photographs for his portfolio or whatever, and he would give the model some prints from the shoot. Well, nobody does printing these days, so TFP has literally just become kind of a label that means we're going to trade, okay? So that's basically what it is. You'll see some people call it TFCD, which is time for CD, but yeah, it's a trade is really what it comes down to. They're all kind of the same, okay? All right, Troy's got a question here. Any problem strapping a speedlight to a CFL umbrella rod since I don't have a speedlight mount yet? No, I mean, in theory, you could tape the doggone thing to the rod as long as you've got a way to mount the umbrella rod. I will tell you, Troy, that like on Amazon, you can get those mounts for like $5. They're really, really cheap. You don't need like super expensive one, super fancy one. If you remind me in the group, Troy, I will give you a link to one that I'm talking about that they're like super inexpensive. It's got a little hot shoe on it, everything. But yeah, I mean, that comes down to problem solving. Do whatever you got to do. Okay. Let's see. Dee's got a question here. So this seems like a silly question, but is a portrait photographer doing something wrong when the photographer seems more excited about the shot than the model? Or is this just the generation we are in now with so many selfies and instant portrait pics that the subjects think they can do it themselves, but it's obvious to pros what's what? D, that is a great question. So here's the thing, D, and I apologize because I have a feeling I'm going to kind of be insulting you, and I don't mean to insult anyone, but gotta be honest. It's not a silly question. However, it is silly to think that the pros know what's what and that the client doesn't. Once again, and tonight's a good night for this question because I've talked about this a couple times. No one else will have the same experience with your pictures as you do. So you are talking about a portrait photographer. So I am going to assume, based on your question, that we are talking about having a professional relationship, photographer being hired to create a portrait. Okay? That means your job is to create an image that your client likes. So if your client is not excited about your pictures, you suck. And not in a good way. I'm sorry, but that's just how it is. So what do you do about that? How do you deal with that? How do you make sure that doesn't happen? Well, number one, it means conversing. So do understand, folks, that professional photographers, we're all a bunch of idiots. You can quote me on that. No professional photographer ever in history bought a camera for the very first time thinking, I want to buy this camera and make tons of money. I want to buy this camera and pay my bills with this camera. No. Every photographer picks up a camera for the first time because they think it would be cool to take pictures. And then it becomes a passion. And they think, wow. And then they get this really dumb idea. The dumb idea? Wouldn't it be cool if I could pay my bills with this camera? Or wouldn't it be cool if I could at least make enough money to pay for my habit to buy more cameras? But the minute they have that idea, and this is why they're so stupid, myself included here, by the way, the minute you have that idea, the rules change. Because now it's not about you. Every picture that you have taken up to that point in time is about you. You thought it was interesting. You thought it was cool. Oh, I want to photograph this. I don't want to photograph that. But I want to photograph this. It's all about you. The minute you agree to take money from someone, it is no longer about you. It is about them. And it is your job to make them happy. That's why you heard me talk about earlier with Anand's question and the fact that I avoid taking rush jobs unless I can be really confident that everybody's on the same page, because I'm not willing to give up control. That's the key. So, honestly, I'm sorry to say that the challenge that you have is, if your subjects aren't liking your portraits, it means you're not doing a good job with your portraits. That doesn't mean that your lighting sucks. That doesn't mean that your composition's bad. But it means that you are not providing them what they are looking for. How do you solve that? You talk to your clients in advance. You have conversations. You make sure that you're setting realistic expectations, that you know exactly what they want. There is a video on my YouTube channel, D, that's all about how to prepare for headshot sitting. You should watch it. And then you'll understand what I'm talking about the conversing part and the communicating with your clients in advance of the shoot to make sure that the pictures that you're doing are exactly what they want. Okay? So I would encourage you, check out that video. It's called How to Prepare for Headshot Sitting. And believe me, it's stuff that most people never, ever, ever, ever consider about doing portraits. But yet you have to if you want to do a successful portrait. All of it's really, really important. Okay? All right, so Nicole's got a question here. What's the difference between test shots and TFP? Boy, everybody is like hung up on TFP tonight. So one last time, TFP stands for time for prints. It is a trade. Test shots, TFP, pretty much all the same thing, Nicole. The phrase test shots does have its history in the modeling world. It's really honestly kind of a moot point at this stage of the game. Test shots, TFP, it's all the same. Bottom line, nobody's getting paid. That's pretty much what that comes down to, okay? So let's see here. Matthew W. Matthew's back. He had a question for me last week about, and I told him to go look up the inverse square law. So let's see. Matthew's a high school student, by the way. His question is, he has a Canon 700D with an 18 to 55 millimeter lens, and he wants to do portraits with a Mapplethorpe-esque feel. So some of you guys may remember me talking about his question last week, but he has no lights unless he's in school. Is there any advice on using available light sources such as art drawing lamps and ordinary table lamps? Also, what equipment, lenses, etc. do I recommend to progress in portrait photos? Okay, so Matthew, great questions, lazy questions. Sorry, Matthew. As much as I always go out of my way to help high school kids, I'm always the first to tell high school kids that they're being lazy learners. So, 2 videos, Matthew. Jot this down. Go back to my YouTube channel as soon as I'm done talking. With regards to using the light bulbs and all that kind of stuff, there is a video. It's an older video on my channel. In fact, is it here where I can show you what it looks like? It is. Let me go over here really quick. Homepage of my channel. So the front page, scroll all the way to the bottom. Matthew, you need to watch this video. Learn how to see light. Remember the egg. And Matthew, after you watch the video, listen very closely to what I say at the end of the video. I'm going to tell you at the end of the video, don't think that because you watched the video, you understand what you saw. You won't understand it until you go do it. So Matthew, you're not allowed to ask me any more questions until you do the egg and post the egg pictures in my group. I want to see 5 egg pictures from you, Matthew. That's the assignment. That's the assignment that I give to my college students that I teach. 5 egg pictures. Okay? So, that's the first video you're going to watch. The second video that you're going to watch, since you're asking about equipment and lenses and all that kind of stuff, and the problem of it is I may not be able to show it to you here. Now I'm not going to be able to show it to you on this page, and since this is the beta version, I can't click, but there is a video on my channel, Matthew. It's all about lens selections for portraits. Watch that video. Okay, or even if you search, there it is. Chad's going to get it for you. So Chad, it's the one about what's the best lens to use for portraits. Chad will find the link. He'll put it in here for you. Make sure you watch those 2 videos, Matthew. But you got to do the egg. If you're in high school and you're trying to learn this stuff, and especially if you want to do Mapplethorpe, learn the egg. If you learn the egg, You can do Mapplethorpe with a light bulb. You can go to Home Depot and for like $10 get a clamp light with a big reflector on it. All that stuff will work like just great. Okay, so watch that video. All right. So last question here, gang. Comes to us from Sammy. I'll be shooting my first wedding for a friend in a month. Any top tips for a beginner there? Oh gosh, Sammy. I have to pause. In fact, here, I'm going to have a drink of water, no soda tonight, so that way I'm not that hyper, right? So, first of all, Sammy, I always have to say this just so that, I'm making sure that I get the right message across here. Hopefully, number one, you're not getting paid for this. Number two, hopefully this friend is a friend that likes to live dangerously, okay? And I will be honest, hopefully number three, hopefully you are not the primary shooter, okay? So the reason I say those three hopefullys is because if you're shooting a wedding a month away and you're on YouTube asking for tips on how to shoot a wedding, that's scary, not gonna lie. So I'm not gonna give you a lot of tips because anything I do, it's just a bunch of hot air. And I'm gonna ask the folks that are listening to me talk right now, don't start typing tips in, please. Because the problem we have here is none of the people that are in this chat room listening know a damn thing about your wedding, its location, time of day, 1,000 other details, which hopefully you know. So here's the advice I will give you that is sound advice. Comes down to one word. I lied. Let's go two. We'll make it two, okay? The first word, planning. Second word, preparation. Planning means sit down with, here we go, Andre, yeah, but two weddings photographers does make it easier, but once again, folks, I'm asking you out of respect. Don't start dumping advice in here because you are not helping this person. You're simply not. So please, follow along. Sammy, what you need to do, number one, is you need to plan. How do you plan? It means you need to sit down with your friend and his or her fiance and have discussions about what photographs do they want, what pictures do you need to take that day, and make sure you have a list. Once you have the list, you need to do that sooner than later. Don't do that in 2 weeks right before the wedding. Don't do it in 3 weeks right before the wedding. Do it like tomorrow, literally. Get that list. Now that you have that list, you can start to go through that list and you can start to imagine the pictures that you have to take. Once you can imagine the pictures that you have to take, you can start to identify what are my obstacles going to be. So once you have that list, one of the first things you want to do is go to the church or to the location where the wedding is going to be. If it's going to be outdoors, whatever, go there. If it's outdoors, go at the time of day that the wedding is going to happen. Look at the light at that time of day. Get a sense of the backgrounds. Get a sense of what camera angle is going to work for you. Get a sense of what lenses you're going to need. Go there and see it. In fact, have one or both of them go with you to show you where the altar is going to be. Every little detail. Go walk through it with them. That's the first thing. Once you've done all of that stuff, now you can start to solve your problems. The problems being, how do I get this shot? How do I get that shot? What do I do? That list is crucial. And then the preparation part is, Luis, thank you so much. Sincerely, I really, really appreciate that super chat. Thank you. Once you have got that planning list, the preparation is, what gear am I going to need? The preparation is, even for that matter, adding to that planning list, okay, I just took this shot. Where do I need to go next? What do I need to be? So that you know, if this is the first time you're doing wedding, where do I have to go from one shot to the next to the next? Don't just show up at this wedding with your camera and take pictures whenever stuff happens. That's the worst thing you could possibly do. Also, if you only have one camera, Sammy, and if you really care about this friend, then you need to rent a second body. Because what are you going to do if you go and you drop your camera? Or if you're one of those photographers that makes it viral on YouTube and falls into the fountain? What are you going to do for the rest of the wedding? 2 cameras. Troy, they do have a rehearsal, but not far in advance. The rehearsal is usually the day before the wedding, so that's not near enough time, okay? If he's shooting this in a month, Sammy, you need to do this planning now, okay? Period. So seriously, Sammy, if this is your first one, like, congratulations, go for it. But you definitely, you need to prep. You really got to prep. The more prep, the better it's going to be, the better your pictures will be, and also the less nervous you'll be, and the better the outcome, I promise you. So get started, because a month is not a lot of time. But it gives you time if you have to rent a camera, all that kind of stuff. Even if you need to rent a lens, if you don't have the best lenses, I promise you, it will make all the difference in the world. Okay? All right, gang, so listen, it's time to wrap up. This has been another episode of TogChat. So get out there and please put all this information to use, all right? I hope to see you guys here next Monday for another live episode of TogChat. So once again, seriously, thank you so much. Please be sure to subscribe and comment. And whatever you do, remember these words. Thanks for watching another live episode of TogChat. Now go pick up that camera and shoot something, because your best shot, it's your next shot. So keep learning, keep thinking, and keep shooting. Adios.